After all the speculations, spy shots, teasers and a lot of waiting, the brand new KTM Adventure 390 is finally here. You see, the first gen KTM Adventure 390 is a very popular choice among tourists and motorcyclists, right? But it's not a perfect bike. The engine lacks bottom end grunt, the suspension is too stiff. KTM knows it took parts that it had and jumbled up a bike to make an adventure bike to cater to the massive demand in the market. And KTM knew this. So they went immediately back to the drawing board. They had a brand new platform come up, which is much more focused towards the adventure, with a brand new engine, brand new frame, and it is a lot more adventure focused now. So will the tourers still be happy with this bike? Will the off-road enthusiasts finally be able to know what KTM prowess in the off-road category is? Let's find out. On the chassis front, this gets a brand new chassis. It's a new platform which is shared between the Duke 390, the Adventure 390, the SMC and the Enduro, both of those which will come later this year. The chassis is new, which we already saw in the Duke, and it comes with the same benefits that came with the Duke. The difference is in the suspension segment. This gets 205 millimeters of travel on the front, 200 millimeters of rear, which is both allowed by this new platform. You've got a 21-inch setup on the front and an 18-inch setup on the rear. That platform is complemented by this LC4C engine. We've already seen this engine in the Duke 390 video. If you've not seen that video, please go and watch that video. I'll put it down in the description. It's essentially the same. There are no hardware changes. There are a few tune changes that happen with this motorcycle and with the riding modes that it comes with, but it has the same benefits that the Duke engine had. Much better bottom end and mid-range. The power comes in about 1000 RPM earlier, and you do feel all of that when you're riding out on the road. Overtaking and other vehicles is much more breezier. Just open throttle, there's no drama, nothing. The engine just carries it through. Much more refined. The first gen KTM 390 was inspired by KTM's bigger motorcycles from 5 years ago. This, however, is very clearly inspired by their Dakar winning rally motorcycle. This tall windscreen up on the front, you've got a double headlamp setup flat, you've got this big beak, which by the way is standard on this bike. These flat side panels that protrude forward, this by the way KTM is very proud of. These are polypropylene panels with pigmented coloring. So what that means is basically that if you have a fall and these panels scratch, the colors will stay as it is and they won't peel off, because these colors go all the way through the panel. Isn't that great for off-road enthusiasts? And then you also have this sharp tail at the very end, which is very much reminiscent of their Dakar motorcycle. With that Dakar design, you also get this high up mounted display. Now this position is great because when you're sitting and riding, it is very visible, and even when you're saddling, you don't have to look too low to see what's happening on the screen. The details on the screen is very similar to what was there on the Duke 390, but in the electronic segment, you now also get cruise control on this motorcycle as standard on the top spec variant, right? So you've got a button here, you click that and your cruise control is now activated. You can use these two paddles on the bottom to control your speed as you ride. It works phenomenally well. The party trick here is when your cruise control is activated and you are set at a certain speed, you can still use the quick shifter without disengaging cruise control. Fantastic tech. Apart from the quick shifter, in your electronic aids department, you've got traction control switchable, you've got ABS switchable, and you've got 3 riding modes which impact the throttle response, the traction control and the ABS. And finally, when you switch off the motorcycle, these modes retain the values that you had. So if you've kept it on ABS off or traction control off, when you switch it off, it won't switch it back on again. Now we've been putting all of that tech to use today on the road, and here's what I think. When you ride this motorcycle, there's no resemblance to the old KTM whatsoever. The old KTM was a mixed bag motorcycle. You could not tell what that bike was meant to do. This, on the other hand, you very clearly know what sort of a bike you are riding. It's got long travel plush suspension, so you go over bad patches in a much more comfortable way. What that means, on the other hand, is if you are trying to ride hard into corners, this is not going to be as pliant as the previous adventure bike. But I think a big factor of that are the tires. The previous bike used to come with Metzeler Tourances, very grippy rubber. These are Apollo Tramplars. So if you put an upgraded set of tires on this bike, I think the cornering ability should be just as good, especially considering that you've got massive adjustment in terms of suspension, front and back both. So you dial in the suspension for a stiffer ride and it should hold your corners much better. What enhances the riding experience even more is the brand new engine. The quick shifter is seamless. This is a very refined engine for the size that it is and the power that it puts out. Overtakes are effortless. You've got plenty of power to cruise at high speeds. It's just a no drama engine. That's the road segment, but all of these upgrades were not done for the road segment. These were done for the off-road segment. Let's find out what this baby can do off-road. The primary upgrade on this bike comes in the form of suspension. As we discussed, it's got much more travel on the front and the rear, and that makes a massive difference. When I was riding through this plateau, there was a big bump that I did not see coming, and I went through it, and the bike did not give me a lot of drama, whereas in that same spot, the old motorcycle would have thrown me off. So long travel suspension is the key here. The engine has much better bottom end grunt than the previous motorcycle, but if you want to do some serious off-roading, this bike will need some tinkering. Let's talk about that. So if you're looking at getting this motorcycle for hardcore off-road trail riding, where you want to have a lot of fun on trails, you're going to like this engine a lot because it's got fantastic mid-range, which helps you start that slide out of corners, and great top end, which helps you drive through it and enjoy that slide completely. So that torquey motor is definitely going to be a plus. What you will need to do is upgrade to probably some button tires, which will give you a deeper dig into the mud, and some risers, because if you want to saddle all the time, then you will need risers to get into a more comfortable position and be able to maneuver the bike better, especially if you are over 5'8", 5'9". On the other hand, if you're an exploratory rider who likes to go to different spots and just reach there to enjoy the experience, you will have to get used to the engine. This is much better in the mid-range and the bottom end than the previous engine, but it still has a lot of torque coming up at the higher RPM. So if you're climbing up a trail or getting out of loose mud, you will still need to rev the engine. It is something that you need to learn how to use that engine. Once you do that, the motor is perfectly capable of getting you out of situations and making you go to those extremely beautiful places that you like to go. To conclude, this new platform with the frame, the extra long suspension and this new engine has made this motorcycle a lot more versatile. Riders will now be able to tailor this motorcycle to their use case because the inherent platform is not restrictive at all. Having said that, this retains its innate KTM nature. It's not for everybody. It still wants you to ride fast. It still urges you to rev the motorcycle high. That's where the massive fun factor is. So if you're looking at getting this bike, please ensure you ride it, take a complete thorough test ride and see if it fits the way you want to ride it or not. I'm Zain from the Zain. I'm here with Motor World India. Please follow us on YouTube for more such content. Hit us on Instagram where we will be answering a lot of your questions through reels. I'm signing out. See you next time.